Hi, I'm Kayleigh and I'm an arts tutor with South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture. Today we're going to start a 6-week drawing course. We're going to cover things like drawing with pencil, charcoal, chalks and watercolour pencils. We'll cover a range of subjects and you'll learn lots of different techniques on shading, observational drawing, and today we're going to take it right back to basics. So all you'll need is a pencil, a rubber and a sheet of paper. And we're going to start off with some observational drawings, which will be great for whether you are starting off drawing an oil painting masterpiece or whether you're just doodling in a sketchbook. Let's get started. So all you need to start any sort of drawing is a simple HB pencil. This is an HB pencil. It's the same as what you would use if you were at school. It works pretty much like a normal pencil, but there's lots of different kinds you can actually get as well, and you might have bought a pack of pencils that have a whole bunch of things in them and you have no idea what they mean. So I just wanted to do a quick little overview on what they all are. So HB stands for, the H stands for hard, the B stands for soft, and the harder the pencil, you move up your numbers. So you've got an H, you can go 2H, 3H, 4H, 5H. I've got a couple of different examples here. So the H pencil looks kind of similar to your HB, but if you move right the way up to the end of the scale, which is your 5H, then you can see how much lighter it is. So I've got the same amount of pressure on the pencil, I've not changed that at all, it's just a much lighter finish for it. The pencil lead is a lot harder, which just means that there's less lead going on the page, but if you were looking to do like a watercolour painting, then this is really good for getting a really light under drawing in first before you put your paint on top. The B stands for soft, and so the higher up you go, say you've got your 4B, you'll notice how much darker it is. So again, I've not changed how I'm holding that at all, it's just a lot darker on the page, right up to your 6B, which you actually go right up to 9B. But this is a 6B and you can see how dark it is. So your pencils are just there to help you along with the process. They're not completely necessary for everything, but if you were doing a really dark area, say in the still life just now, it's really dark right down there in the plant, and maybe the shadow underneath, then it's a lot easier to use just like a 6B or 8B to get that in there rather than constantly going in over the top with these sort of pencils. So they're just there to help you, but not completely necessary. I'm going to do all this drawing with just an HB pencil. I'm going to show you a few different observational exercises that you can do. These are great for warming up. They're also great for just improving your drawing skills as well. So I've got a still life in front of me. It's just got lots of different things in it, which means that you can choose which one you want to draw. So you can follow along with what I'm drawing, or if you've got something in front of you just now, you can use that as well. I probably will just focus on a couple of things, but there might be some times that I decide, oh, I'm going to give it all a shot. But for this, you'll need a timer. So I've got my timer set here. We're going to put it at 30 seconds for everything, which sounds really short when you see how much detail's in this, but we just want 30 seconds to really try and get as much in as we can, and it gets your brain working and really looking at what's out there. So the first exercise we're going to do is just nothing fancy, 30 seconds, draw as much as you can, or focus on one thing and get as much detail in. So I'm going to do it along with you, and we'll start the 30 seconds now. I've got 10 seconds left. And stop. So you can see that you can't actually fit a lot in 30 seconds, and the good thing is it can be a rubbish drawing, and that's okay because you've not had a lot of time in it. But what you can look at is what you've done well in it. What I've managed to do is fit in quite a lot of things, and the perspective is probably not too bad. I've got this rock which is coming over the top of my plant pot, which works really well. I've got my shell at the front here, which I quite like the angle of. And you can see lots of these ones. I really like this one bit here that I've just brought right the way down. So you can focus in on lots of different things. You can't really see the detail of the flowers, but you could tell there was something there. So it's always good to sort of analyse your picture just afterwards, see what you like about it, and then move on to the next one. So the next one we're going to do is slightly different. We're going to try and just use one line. So don't want you to take your pencil off the page. And this is good for just working out where all your details are. So this time I think I'll probably focus in on just a couple of things. So maybe the shell and then some of these stones. And you can follow along with that as well, or you can do your own, but just one line. And we're going to do 30 seconds again, starting now. So it's okay if it looks like just lots of lines all joining everything together. That's allowed as long as you're looking at your shapes. And try to get in some of that shell right at the end. There we go. And stop. So I've just used that one line to pull everything together. I quite like how my rocks have come together here with one line. It works quite nicely. My proportions are probably not too bad, but my perspective's a little bit out because my shell's too close. But within 30 seconds, that's all right. Don't give yourself a hard time for it. I actually quite like this bit here. So sometimes you do it a little bit in your drawing and you think, oh, I'm going to use that elsewhere. I'm going to do something different. Right, we're going to do another one just now, which is using your non-dominant hand. This is a good way of getting your brain working with your drawing, because you're really going to be looking at what you're seeing rather than sometimes you kind of make up what you think you see. If I said to you draw a shell, you would just draw what's in your head already. Whereas if you're actually using your non-dominant hand, you tend to look at things a little bit more closely. So we're going to do 30 seconds again. I'll probably focus in on this shell this time. And let's start now. I find this really difficult actually. I'm very right-handed. A couple of seconds left. And stop. That was really difficult for me. Some people find it a little bit easier if you're quite ambidextrous, but I'm definitely not. But actually I quite like that. It's quite illustrative. You can tell it's a shell because you've got these sort of, I've focused in at the end just on these sort of crackly lines around the bottom, and everything's sort of perspective wise coming into this sort of point here. So that's not too bad for 30 seconds. The next one we're going to do is not looking at our page. So I want you just to choose something here and you're going to just watch that and not look at your page. It's incredibly difficult because the first thing you want to do is just look back and see what you've done. If you're watching me do this, you're going to think I'm drawing something absolutely crazy, but it works really well at, again, making you just look at what's actually in front of you. So a little tip for this one is how we did the one line here. Actually, if you do that again over here, it's going to make sure everything's sort of a little bit closer together, or you end up with something that's a bit Picasso where you've maybe got a shell here and you've got the rock over here, just because you're not looking at your page. So we'll do 30 seconds again. Just start, and put my pencil in there already. Just starting now. Look at the timer. And we've got 5 seconds left. and stop. It looks a mess. Looks an absolute mess, but it's been a good exercise in actually working out where everything is. Actually, my shell here, so where I think I started here and I've moved on to my rocks, actually how that's all worked together is quite good perspective wise. And yeah, I've got the kind of marks in for the shell. Again, you're allowed to do rubbish drawings. You've got 30 seconds and you've not looked at your page. So it's just a good way to get warmed up. And our last one we're going to do, we need 2 pencils for. So feel free to choose 2 different colours if you want, or you can just use 2 normal pencils as well. And we're going to have a pencil in each hand and start to draw something like that. We'll do 30 seconds again and starting now. I quite enjoy this one because I think you always get something quite fun from it. And if you choose this plant like I have, your 2 hands are going in totally different directions, in different ways. So I'm coming across the front here as well. And draw some rocks. Even your shell coming out. Sometimes I think my drawings like this are better than normal ones. Oh, and 35 seconds, sorry, we're just ran over a little bit. There we go. So that's using 2 hands. I think that works quite well. I'm quite happy with that actually. I've managed to map out a few different things. I've got my brain really working trying to do 2 different things at once with your hand going one way and your other hand going the other. So I feel definitely warmed up, ready to do a little bit of drawing now. I'm going to go on and show you a few different drawing techniques and different shading techniques to take this a bit further. We're going to learn a little bit about how to draw with shapes. This whole setup, depending on what your still life is, it could be anything. You could have a bottle, you could have more flowers, you could draw your kettle, it could be anything you find around the house. But everything that you draw, even faces, are made up of shapes. So whenever you're trying to work out, where am I going to start with this? There's so much going on, where am I going to start? Look for the shapes and things. So I've turned my shell round a little bit from our last way we were drawing it. And it just shows you that it's much easier to sort of break down into shapes overall. I'm going to start with my shell here, and my shell is definitely a bit of an oval. Kind of comes up at the top, so maybe more circular almost. And it's got this sort of rectangle bit at the bottom here. You can draw a rectangle on. So just try and break everything down as much as possible. It might not be right first time. You can see I'm just doing lots of sketchy lines. As long as you keep your pencil really, really light, then you can rub out any lines. It's all right to rub things out. Once you've got your main shapes in of something, then you can start going into a little bit more detail. So having a look at how it's really, really flat at the bottom, so we can keep this line in and rub out any bits that you maybe think are getting in the way, tidy it up a little bit as you go. And then it sort of comes up at this side, goes in a little bit, and then it comes all the way out and round. I'm going to go right the way round here, but it is a little bit jaggy at the top, so we can go back into that. At this side we can't really see because there's a rock in the way, so don't try and put in something you can't see. Do just put in the rock in front of it, that's fine. So if you can't see that little bit, let's just mark it in. Then it goes up just a little bit and then back out again, like this. There's some triangle shapes coming down here, which you can see as well. It comes down like that, and then there's a little triangle just in this bit. And those are a little bit marked in with shading and a little bit just a line as well. You've then got these triangles that are coming up here. So it's flattened at the top and it comes down into a point. So obviously I'm just kind of roughly showing you this just now. If you're going into a lot of detail, do count them and make sure you've got them all in the right places. But at the moment, they're just sort of triangle shapes like this. and they come up. And then once you've got those in, you can start looking at where things change at the top. So it could be that kind of comes down, that bit goes up, comes down in there, back up. And then you can rub out any lines and really tidy it up. You can see it start to come together now. So it looked a little bit messy at the start, but now it's almost there. And if that's rocks in front, then you can't see that little bit. So that's simply by looking at what kind of shapes can I see in front of me. I've done an oval, I've done a rectangle, some little triangles, and some triangles up here. And I've started to get in the shape of my shell. So you can do that with absolutely anything. For this shell, it's very circular, and it sits just in front of this shell, roughly about here. So you're almost drawing a circle, and you can see the circle here from my angle anyway. Yours might be slightly different, but from this angle you can see, and it's got a little bit of a triangle coming out the back, like that. A rounded triangle. And once you've got that in, you can then start to see, where else are there shapes, right? So there's some more circles in here, like this, and it starts to come forward into a point. And the point comes just out further than this main circle. From there, you can start to tidy up little bits with your rubber and get it into the sort of shape you're looking for. So at the back, sort of comes down, and this bit comes up the front. I'm drawing a little bit heavier just so you can see it on the camera, but do keep your lines as light as you can. You can start to see it come together now as well. There we go. So you can do that with absolutely anything that's there, whether it's the flower, what shape the flowers are. The rocks, they're very circular or oval shaped, but they are like wonky as such. They're not a complete oval, but you could almost draw it in like an oval and then start working into what shape it really is. So this bit comes out the front a little bit instead. And you can just break that down for everything else in the picture if you're wanting to put in your plant pot as well, into squares. If you're doing a person's face, if you're doing an animal, even a landscape, you can see everything split into shapes as well. For example, your landscape might just have lots of triangles in it. You've got your mountains, maybe you've got a loch at the bottom. There's lots of triangles always in good landscape pictures anyway, because of composition. So yeah, we'll go on and do some shading techniques now. We're going to go on and do our shading techniques. So for this, I want you to draw 6 circles in the middle of your page. They do not have to be perfect circles. These are just for a little bit of a guide on 6 different types of shading. And even if you are a seasoned drawer and you know everything about shading, this is always a good little way just to practice and warm up before you start. It might also teach you a couple of wee things that you've never known before. And if you're a complete beginner, then these are your sort of main types of shading that you want to build up within your picture. So shading number 1 is called layering, and this is the best way to practice shading and to get it within your picture. It's always good to start light and work to dark, because it's harder to take dark marks out of your picture than it is to just layer more and more up. So for this one, I want you to hold your pencil as far back as you can, and you're working from your shoulder or from your elbow. So you've got lots of kind of space to move. You don't want to avoid being too close up. That's good for writing or for small details. You want to hold it as far back as possible. And we're just gonna give it a nice layer of pencil. So I'm kind of using the side of my pencil here. And just keep your pressure the same. You don't want to be too heavy or changing the pressure. Try and keep it as flat as possible. The more you practice, the better you get. I find even just now, that I'm quite happy with that. But as the day goes on, the more I draw, the better and more control I've got over that as well. So layering shading is when you've done one layer of stuff and then you just layer up on top. Same pressure on the pencil, don't change the pressure. And then you can add another layer, another layer, another layer. And the more layers you've got on, the darker that bit gets. So if you're wanting it to be dark at this side towards the lighter, then you want to just keep layering up this bit until it's as dark as it needs to be. You can see there's a really nice gradient going on there now, and that's from just building up, building up, building up. Easiest way to shade, and great for giving your picture lots of depth. Next up, we've got gradients. So this one is a wee bit more about pencil control. A great one to practice as a warm-up, similar to our observational sketches, just to get yourself kind of warmed up for drawing anything at all. Gradient is where you're changing the pressure of your pencil. So this one we kept the pressure the same, but just layered up. This time we want to try and do it all in one go, but changing the pressure. So I'm going to start really light, and then I'm going to get heavier, and heavier, and heavier, and heavier. There we go. That, I can't believe I did that first time, to be honest. It's not normally as good as that. It will take you a few shots to get it the way you want it, but eventually you should have something that looks a little bit like this, but you've done it all in one go. And you can work from light like that and get darker, or you can work from dark and get lighter as well, which is sometimes a wee bit of an easier way to do it because it depends. Sometimes you get a good gradient, sometimes not as much. Sometimes you've got something that's quite harsh and you find that you've not quite got the gradient quite right, but just keep practicing. The next one we're going to do is smudging. Now, smudging is great for getting a really smooth finish, but you want to avoid over smudging things. So if you don't know what smudging is, I want you to give one of the circles just a light layer of pencil right the way over it. Like that. And you can use either a bit of kitchen roll, you can use paper towel, you can use actual smudging tools, or even just your finger. If you're doing a masterpiece, try not use your hands too much because you will end up transferring the oil onto the page and it won't work as good. But if you're just having a little sketch, a wee smudge with your finger works absolutely fine. Or you can use a smudging tool like this, which is basically just paper all rolled up, just to smudge it all in and get a really smooth finish. If you're using kitchen roll, just roll it up as tight as possible into a little point, similar to that, trying to emulate that, and just go right the way over the top. This is quite satisfying because it looks so smooth, but the problem with smudging is if you do that too much, you'll have a really, really flat picture and everything will just look a little bit flat and not standing out at all. So it's good to add a little bit of smudging in, but you don't want to add too much. So if you do end up over smudging your picture and everything's like that, you can go in over the top and use different ways to pull that out. So you could add a little bit of layering to it, you could add some gradients to it. So if you want to darken down just this bit, you can always add in some little pencil marks, you can see those coming through. You can also smudge it down to make it darker as well in certain bits. So our next one we're going to do, which is good to bring back a smudged picture and to add lots of depth to your picture, is cross-hatching. And you'll either love this or hate it. If you're quite a neat person, you feel like you're messing up your drawing. If you're quite a scattery person like myself, you'll probably quite like it. I do cross-hatching with most of my pictures. I think it just brings things to life. So for cross-hatching, you want your pencil strokes going in one way, as close together as you can get them, and then going in the other way, close together as well. And the closer together your pencil marks, the darker that area will be. So the more concentrated everything is. You can go in lots of different directions And you see that just darkens down that area there. And it keeps that bit light. So if you've got less pencil marks, the lighter it'll be up the top. And you can just keep going over that until you're happy with how dark certain areas are. You can be more scribbly with it as well. So you can just go back and forth. And it works really well to get it darker down, but you see those lovely pencil marks shining through. I'm going to show you an example here of someone that's drawn some hands using a lot of cross hatching. And you can see how realistic it looks, but when you look really closely, you've got lots of little tiny scribbles in here. You can do that with pen, you can do it with pencil, charcoal, pretty much anything. Yeah, so there's lots going on there. That's a good example of it. And you can pull together a full picture with that. Alternatively, you could do something like this, which, believe it or not, is drawn. It looks like a photograph, but it's actually pencil drawn, which has used lots of smudging. But then there's lots of layering and things going on down here, which has brought it to life a little bit. So there's lots of different ways you can use your pencil. Next one we're going to do is stippling, or kind of like pointillism, dot work. There's lots of words for it, but it's for the patient people amongst us, not very much me. I find it quite difficult. It's adding lots and lots of little dots in order to shade something in. The further away your dots are, the more scattered they are, the lighter the area, and the closer together they are, the darker the area. That's sort of a concentration of spots all at the bottom is what's making it look darker. And if you are patient enough to fill in this whole circle, please do try. It's great practice, and it can be very satisfying. If you're good at it, you can get people who do full portraits in it. It's amazing. And then you can see just a few scattered ones out here. Make all the difference. So you can start to see that's been shaded now around that side. Our last thing we're going to do is using our rubber. So you can actually erase marks, which is going to help with your shading. So for this one, I want you just to have another kind of layer of pencil. You can make it as dark as you like. You can smudge it if you want as well. And you're going to use your rubber to rub out highlights. So if you wanted a highlight coming around here, maybe coming around here, then you can use your rubber to do that. And it's such a good way to get highlights in, even if you were wanting to tidy up round about that circle. Don't be scared of rubbing parts out, because you can always add them back in again. There we go. You can darken things up if you were to say, oh, I don't want that in there as much. You can add another layer of pencil on top. But one of the last things you should do with a lot of your pictures is just go in and put in that brightest highlight as possible. On the still life here, there's loads of bits that are brightest. It depends where your light's coming from as well. Because we're filming, there's quite a bright light on this, so everything's very, very bright. But you might have just one angle coming in this way. This bit is probably your lightest bit on the shell here. So the last thing I would do if I was drawing that is just rub out where the bright highlight is. And I think that's us for our sort of main types of shading. We want to try and get quite a few of these in every picture. If you keep everything to just one of these, it kind of loses a little something. So try and get as many in as possible, at least 3. I always think it's a good way. You'll tend to use this one anyway. This one kind of comes a bit naturally, but if you can try and get a little bit of cross hatching in, it definitely is good for depth, and this is definitely good for a smoothness. If you were doing this still life, I would be using cross hatching to get a lot of the elements in here, but a lot of my shadows I would probably do smudging with, and it just shows a contrast between them as well. So we're going to go on and draw an actual picture of a chimpanzee, and I'm going to show you how to use your shapes and your shading to draw a chimpanzee. Today we're going to be drawing this chimpanzee. This chimpanzee is amazing to draw, mainly because it's split into lots of different shapes, and we've got lots of different textures, we can get some great shading going on, and we can show some different types of shading, sort of differentiate between the hair and the face, and then even our little glint in the eye there is really, really wonderful to draw. So we're going to break it down first off and just look at where the shapes are. If you have this image, you can draw on the paper. If you're doing it from the screen, then it'll be nice and easy to see as well. But what I like to do first is just mark in what my shapes are. So this is like an egg shape, and I'll probably just refer to it as an egg for the for the rest of this drawing tutorial. This is a sort of egg shape here, and then we've got real kind of deep set circles for where the eyes are, so they sort of fall back with this highlight up here. So we've got two circles like this, and then we've got a really nice love heart shape that goes right the way around the brow bones, like this. So I just kind of go over it until my pencil's sort of used to where all these shapes are going, and then we transfer it onto the page. I'm going to start by drawing the egg shape. And take a bit of time to get it right. You might not get it right first time, and that's okay. I'm going to be drawing this a little bit bigger than the photograph just so that it's a wee bit easier to see. I'm quite happy with that. There will be bits I'll tidy up, but for the moment it's good just to map it in. The circles sit just above the egg shape, so they almost go in like this. And these might change, and if they do change, that's okay as well. It's just so we can get our main shapes in just now. Even if you wanted to put in this sort of line that goes right the way down the middle of the face, this will help as well. So you could add in a line just coming right the way down, goes right down the middle of the egg. Wasn't overly straight first time. And pretty much halfway between the eyes as well. Another good line to have in is where his mouth is, which is a slight kind of sad face. A wee bit down at this side, so you can sort of mark that in. As I'm marking it in, I think I've got the egg a little bit too big. What I'm going to do is just bring it in a little bit, and just keep fixing as you go along. You will see things that change. Okay, now you've got your main shapes in, it's time to just have a look and check that everything's sort of lining up where it should be. So if you were to take a line up, straight line up, or even use your pencil's great for just kind of measuring things out. So the side of his mouth area hits the side of his eye there. So then if you're to transfer that over, the side of the mouth hits the side of the eye. So you probably want this just coming in a little bit more, roughly like that. We'll do the same on the other side. The side of the mouth, oh, the side of the eye again. So sometimes depending on what sort of angle, whatever you're drawing, whether it be an animal, person, an object, whatever angle it's at, it might be slightly different. Just the way you're looking at it, or if you're using a photograph, how it's being photographed. Let's get his head turned slightly to the side. Cool. Great. Now you can add in the nostril areas here. So the nostrils are just like two little ovals. This one closer to the line here, and this one a little bit further away. And just make sure they're sort of pointing up in the right directions. Like that. You can add in a few more details as well if you wanted, like how this sort of comes across. And then let's get in this love heart shape coming round here. You don't want to add in too many details just now, just because there's nothing worse than drawing an amazing eye and then you have to rub it out because it's not in the right place. So the more you just kind of add in your rough shapes just now, the easier it's going to be to change things. You can start to see it coming together. It looks a little bit like a chimpanzee. We now need to get in this sort of head. So have a little look at the kind of size of this. So you want to make sure your proportions are right. So this is something you can use your pencil for again. If you get the back of your pencil and take it to the top of the head here and the top of the head here. So top of the face, sorry, top of the face and top of the head. And then put your finger just to what size it is. And then you can measure that somewhere else. So actually the top of the face to the top of the nose is the same length. So this length and this length are the same. So you want to transfer that on. Just make sure you've got it right first. So I'm going to take this size and move it right up here. Might change as things go on. This sort of goes, mine's a little bit bigger, which means that so try not kind of measure that and then do that there, because I'm drawing mine bigger than what it is. So if this is this size, you're then going to add that on to the top there, so that line goes about there. Then we're going to take the head and it comes down. Just have a look at the width. So it's a bit narrower as it hits there. And then it comes down. This is hair that's going right the way out, so you can just bring that down. And then the shoulder comes out a bit like that. It's looking a bit like an alien just now, but I promise this will look like a chimpanzee. This side, it's a bit wider just with the tilt of the face. It's a little bit wider on this side than the other side. Again, nice light pencil marks means you can change anything. And you've got your shoulder sort of coming out like that. There you go. And the last thing to add in, just to map them in just now, is where the ears are. Now the ears just come right out, similar to human ears. They're just the same kind of shape. And just have a look where they hit. So the bottom of the ear sort of goes to the top of the mouth there. And the top of the ear is just under the brow bone. So yeah, that's just under the brow bone. Maybe needs to be just a wee bit longer to take to the top of the mouth. And on this side, you don't see quite as much of the ear. Just sort of goes in like that. So yeah, this one sticks out a wee bit more. Okay, now I've got my bare bones in there of where everything's sitting. Things might change. Don't feel precious towards what you've got at the moment. The next thing we need to do is look at lots more details. So our details could be starting with one area and working our way up. So we're going to start with this sort of egg area, and then as we work out, we'll work out where things are going. I'm going to start with this top bit. So although we've got a round bit at the minute, actually the top bit sort of pulls in like this at this shape. I'm going to bring it down. And then this bit comes out a little bit and back in. Just bring that round. And down this side. And then the mouth there's a little bit, it kind of starts about there and ends about there. So the mouth's mainly done with shading actually once we get to it. But you can start tidying up bits like taking out lines here and here. And even this line that's going right down the middle now, we don't want that to get in the way of our shading. So if you find something's getting in the way, just take it out for now. I think actually this might be, we need to move everything up a little bit, because if you have a look at the dimensions, yeah, so this bottom bit is a lot bigger. Just keep going back and measuring, you'll have different measuring than me. So this is about roughly the same size. Maybe bring it all up a little tiny bit. So I'm going to bring the mouth up I tend to draw my mouth, tend to draw anything back in. If I'm changing it slightly, I keep the lines in as they are and then rub them out after, because I find that a little bit easier, rather than rubbing it out and then you don't know where it was before. There we go, that looks much better. Quite happy with the proportions there. I'm going to add in these little bits, these creases on either side, and then get more detail in the nose. So the nose, or the nostrils, sort of point up the way, quite dark, and then they're like teardrop shapes. So try and get that in as much as possible. Now if you're wanting to use some different pencils, if you want to go darker in here, you can sort of use those. But for now, I'm just giving them a little light shade. And then I've got a sort of darker crease in here. So it comes down. So you're just looking to find as many details as you can in it. You can start adding in more creases down here if you want, or you can wait until the next stage for that. I'm going to mark it just a few just now. I'll tidy this a little bit up. Now, I'm going to get in some of these lovely kind of wrinkly crease bits just under the eye, and that's going to help inform where the eyes sort of sit if I'm working my way out. So you don't have to be absolutely spot on just now, but if you get the rough proportions right, that's going to help you. And this bit sort of goes up in a V shape. On this side. And I'm just marking in roughly where the eyes are going to go here. So the circles that we drew actually take into account this full eye area rather than the exact eyeball or lid here. So don't feel you have to be taking it right up. The eyes are quite symmetrical on either side. There's not too much of a difference. If you have a look closely, this one's slightly smaller and maybe a tiny bit lower down. If you're drawing people as well, you'll find that most people's eyes aren't completely symmetrical. One will be higher than another. Now you can add in, I'm going to focus just on this side just now, and get a nice round, like a really round eyeball in there, and the contrast of this darkness is really nice. Just get that marked in there. You can get the darkness in. And it's quite a round eye. It's not overly almond shaped like a lot of animals have. Look at cats, they're very almond shaped. Even humans are very almond shaped as well. Add in the iris and the pupil. Just get that in reasonably dark. Just now, you're going to have your highlight which you can rub in later. But yeah, start to see it come together. The eyelid is really thick, so it's almost like kind of banana shape right on top. This. You can use your rubber. If you've got too many lines, I find sometimes I've just got loads of lines everywhere because I'm quite a sketchy drawer. You can tidy those up as you go. And then you've got this bit of eyelid that comes up and out like this. You can get in this line here as well, so almost differentiating between the brow bone and the shadow here, just to bring it down. Go. Now let's move on to the other eye and try and get that as symmetrical and as detailed as the other one. So you want to be, you can use your pencil almost along this way, rather than we've always done it vertically, and go horizontal, and just check if your pencil's horizontal, where do the tear ducts line up? And they sort of line up. You want to make sure that this is lining up as well on yours. You can get in that pupil again, sorry, iris. I always get those mixed up. And then marking how dark it is round about the outside. In here. And get that eyelid in again. Just spend a bit of time making sure you're getting your shapes okay. Might even have a wee bit more to do with the creases coming down here. And rub this line out because it's kind of getting in the way a wee bit now. It's starting to influence what I was doing. Even although it kind of comes around. So just redraw things in if you need to. These are quite V-shaped. Okay, I'm going to put in a wee line just roughly where this bit of forehead is. And this bit's all fur coming out. The next thing I'm going to do is just roughly with the ears. Check your ears are kind of in the same place. And then I'm going to mark in, rather than shapes of the ear, if you think about it as an ear, whether it's an animal ear, a human ear, you start to just have this picture in your head of what it is, and it's almost kind of panicky because it's quite a difficult thing to draw. But if you actually just look at it as shades, so you've got this sort of moon shape shade in here, get this sort of bit of shadow in here, little egg shape, and this bit's darker with your highlight on top, and you can mark that in. And it makes it a lot easier. And it won't look like an ear to start off with, but I promise you, once you've got it all shaded in, it will. It goes a little bit more like that. Okay, and this side, same again. And just mark that in like that just now. And again, that might change. Looks like it's got an earring at the moment. It's getting there. You can start to see it come together. Let's just remove a few lines that we don't need, and then it's shading time. We're going to add in lots of different types of shading to this. It can be starting off with a little bit of layering, turning it into smudging, and then we'll probably have some cross hatching over the top, and then using our rubber as well. It's up to you if you want to use some stippling. Probably won't add too much in this unless there's maybe some little bits around the side that maybe call for it. But first of all, let's try and get in some of our shading round about our eyes and get these a little bit more precise because they're still just sort of blocked in at the moment. And once we've got this big highlight round our brow bone going on, then it's going to work out really, really well. So the way I'm going to start is just by putting a really fine layer of pencil just on the areas that are quite dark and leaving that brow bone area quite blank just now. And although we've got some highlights coming over these areas, we can just use our rubber for those. A really light dusting of pencil works really well. already just adding that in makes it look more realistic. And even go right over the iris as well, because we will be using the rubber to rub out a highlight for that. And it does have brown eyes, so it's quite dark. Obviously we're looking at a colour photo and almost turning it black and white. If you were wanting an easier way to do this, you could just use a black and white photo, but this is a really good way of practicing seeing lights and shades off a photograph. I've not really left much of the brow bone here, but we can rub that out. I'm going to add in a light dusting over the top of the mouth as well, especially this bottom bit, because it's quite dark. And we've got quite a big outline around this just now, which is probably going to disappear once we start our shading, because you want to avoid outlining anything too much or it looks like a cartoon. I'm going to leave this side not as much lead. Don't want it to look too messy. And then just use your instinct. You might have little bits you need to rub out as you go. And then just go back in with the pencil as well if you need to. Take a little bit of this away. If you've got a putty rubber or something, then you can just dab it off. Okay. Right, let's go where we're getting darker. We want to look at where the dark and the light is. I see it really quite dark in this sort of area here, so I'm going to start there and just add another layer of pencil coming up. And then this eyelid is really dark in there. More detail. And remember, where you're holding your pencil will affect what the marks look like as well. So if you do need some more detail, you can come up a bit closer. Try and get all those little creases in. And you'll notice my pencil marks aren't all in the same direction. If you feel more comfortable doing them in one direction, then you can. I'm just not overly fussy about it. I think it adds a wee bit more depth. It's almost like cross-hatching without really thinking about it. But it does help make it darker a lot quicker. Again, if you're wanting to use a different pencil, then you could, it'll make it a lot faster. This side of the face is really quite dark, especially compared to this side with the light shining. So don't be scared to go in there and really darken it down. Let's get this shape around here as well. Going right in there. I kind of automatically left a little bit of white at the eye, but there isn't any, it's all dark in there. It's looking a bit evil just now because you're not getting any highlights on. And I'm not doing anything different from the lines I already had in there. I'm just darkening down the bits I see dark on the photograph and lightening up the other areas. Well, we will lighten up the other areas even though we've not done that yet. Okay. I'm going to go in with my rubber now and just look at where the highlights are. So the first ones are this brow bone up here. And I've got a couple of little bits sort of coming in the top. If you find that your rubber's not sharp enough, then you can use another corner, or you can actually just cut a bit off with some scissors and it gives you that sharpness again back. You also get fancy kind of mechanical pencil things that are good for this, but you don't need it. You get a wee glint in his eye. And these wrinkles. So all wrinkles are made up of a highlight on the top and then a shadow behind. They start to look more alive now. Highlight in there. You can see that. I hope it's showing up okay in the camera, but in real life there's lots of different kind of dark bits, light bits, all shown through. And then you can go back in with your pencil and choose the really dark bits that you need to take back. Out of this whole picture, that bit in the eye is the darkest part of the whole picture. That and the nostrils. So you want to make sure it is quite dark in there. And then we can go on to the other side. Yeah, we'll go on to the other side and then we'll do the nose sort of area. Okay, I've done quite a lot of shading now on this side. There will be things that will change and I'll add more in as we go, but you don't want to go too dark on something and then have to change it. So for example, once we've got this bit in, it might change how things look. We're going to also do a little bit of smudging to add in one of our other techniques. So I'm going to start with the nostrils here, just make sure that they are dark enough. And then just go into lots of detail down here as well. There's lots of wrinkles kind of going on, especially creases round about here, which you can do just with your pencil. You want to avoid being too harsh with your lines, but they need to be harsh enough that you can see them as well. I'm just going to go back and forth and shade this bit. This bit down here is quite dark. There's definitely a darkness here, which I can go in over the top and lighten up. And then there's a darkness down here as well. This top lip's quite dark. And then there's a highlight right the way along here, which I'm going to do with the rubber, but I've kind of naturally left it anyway. At the end. And then down the bottom of the chin, it's quite dark as well. Now if you go outside, I've gone out the line a little bit there, that's okay because this bit's darker underneath. I just want to show you a little bit of smudging. So you can use your finger or you can use a sort of blending stick, but a kitchen roll as well. If you're wanting to add this in, just kind of going over the top. You'll see it gives you a much smoother finish, which are a lovely contrast against other areas. Once you've done this, you might decide you want to do it around the eyes as well. But you'll see it actually works well enough without it. I think it's important to know that you can blend things without it being completely smooth all the time. Try not to get too caught up in smoothing everything off. As you can see, it's a lot flatter than here. But you'll have a preference, everyone's got their own style as well. You might have a preference that you just prefer things to be more smooth. And then you can use your rubber to go in. We'll get that highlight on the mouth there, and we've got round about the nose. This top bit is really quite light. So I'm going to go in and rub that bit out, take it around the side. And a bit down there as well. Then you can go back in with your pencil and just get darker in those areas and lighter. If you've taken some of it out that you need to put back in, it's easy enough to do that. So this is the stage I think you should be adding a wee bit more pencil lines in. You don't want to leave it too much like that. I think this is so much more character if you can see some pencil lines. So try and add a few in over the top of your smudging. Now if you're right-handed like me, once you've kind of done this area, it's kind of hard to go back over because you'll smudge it. If you're left-handed, you should probably start the other side actually, just to avoid smudging, but you probably naturally do that. If you want to avoid that, a wee trick is put a sheet of paper underneath your hand, and then you're going to avoid smudging anything with the rest of your hand. I think he's definitely looking a wee bit sadder in my picture than he is on the... Contemplating something. I'm going to leave that there just now because there's going to be bits I'm going to go back to and darken them down. I just want to show you how to do the hair that's coming out as well. So try and avoid with your hair, you don't want to be doing every single stroke like this. You'll be here forever. So really look at where the dark bits are and the light bits are. This bit round here is just a black mass. Even in the photograph it is just the black mass and you've got these little hairs coming out over the top. So with this, you could use a darker pencil or you can sort of build it up and just make it really dark. And then we are going to go in over the top and get some different hairs kind of coming out. I'll show you on this one side and then I'm going to go ahead and do the rest as well. See, this bit's a little bit lighter up here, so don't go too dark with that. Now already you can see the difference between the hair, where it's a lot darker, and this sort of slightly smoother finish to the face. And it's a little bit lighter as well, because obviously the darkness is over here. You want your eyes and nostrils to still be really dark though. This is the point where you might come in and start adding little bits here and there. And then you want to just go over the top and start adding in some different hairs. Have a little look how the picture looks as well, because you've got little ones that come out. You want a few that are just coming over the top. And just those few over the top make it look like everything's been drawn like that. That's great. One thing to remember is this is a photograph and it is very realistic. You are doing a drawing of the photograph or of the chimpanzee. So it will be a drawing you're doing, it's not a photorealistic. And it could be, but not necessarily. You want it to look drawn. Okay, so I've started drawing in all the sort of hairs there. There's little bits where the ear comes through, so you can sort of rub those out. And another little trick is just to add some hairs in with the rubber as well. So you're going to bring these out as highlights. The ones that are coming from here, we'll do those last once you're definitely finished doing this area, otherwise you'll just have to redo everything. Let's double the time. You can start to see this coming out. You might want to go back in with your pencil again. And add those on. While we're here, we'll do a little bit of the ear, and then I'll let you carry on at your own pace. So the ear, we're going to do the same as we did for the face. Keep it nice and light and smooth. And this bit in here is a bit darker, so we can go darker down. Oh, my pencil smudged a little bit there. Just keep looking back at the photo to see what the darkest bits are. And then once you've got that in, you can sort of bring some more hairs over the top. I'm going to tidy this up a little bit with the rubber. If you've got a background in, might change how you're highlighting your ear here. I'm going to leave a little faint line to where the top of the ear is because you can kind of see it. But if you've got a background, you don't really want any lines going in there. And I'm just layering lots of different bits up. I've got a wee bit too much of a line going around here just now, so I'm just going to add in a few more hairs and I'm almost done on that side. Thanks for joining me today, doing lots of drawing with lots of different shading techniques. I hope you enjoyed that, and over the next few weeks we'll be focusing on lots of different materials and subjects as well. Hope you can join me then. See you later.